Hey everyone, how's it going today, and welcome back to another update. So the big thing to really share in today's update is that, as many of you guys know, is that right now they are currently working on the fourth stimulus package. And then when it comes to the fourth stimulus checks, there are a lot of different things that are going on, but specifically especially just different methods or creative ways that they're really trying to take right now in order to get a lot of social programs through. So whether this includes things such as like fourth stimulus checks, whether this includes things like child tax credit, or just simply put, again, as we've mentioned for a while now, is just any kind of social program that can hopefully put money in our pockets, or to maybe reduce the money that comes out of our pockets, because that is, again, one of the creative ways that they're hoping to try to maybe send some help and relief for anyone that maybe happens to be going through something and still needs it. Now, within all of these methods that we talked about, whether this has to do with like federal checks, state checks, special programs, gas checks, everything related to that world, tax credits, one of the things that many people have kind of asked about, and that's actually very much going on right now, is whether or not President Biden can maybe try to create a special way to approve these stimulus programs, and if there's really any hope or potential hope and chance by doing an executive order. And that is actually one of the very, very big golden questions, because if you guys remember from basically way back when President Trump, or former President Donald Trump at that time period, during the year, when the entire pandemic started, there were many, many times that things had to happen with our country. The most perfect and memorable example is with when unemployment ended. During that specific time period, President Donald Trump at that time period, he basically signed a bunch of executive orders in order to temporarily extend the unemployment, which basically extended it by about $300 an additional per week, including the peuc program. And this ultimately helped to give some time so that we were able to, again, have money inside of our pockets. So the real question is, now that we are living in the future, whether or not President Biden can do the same, and if he was to do the same, what are these actual executive orders? All of this stuff is what we're going to be exploring in today's video, so definitely stay tuned. But as always, before we begin, if you guys hopefully enjoy videos like this, maybe consider smashing the like button, because it is always greatly appreciated, or you can watch to the end and maybe decide there. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell for similar videos. Huge thanks if you guys have been here for a while now. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, maybe personal thoughts, predictions, or maybe honestly just really anything at all. It's always great to just say hi and hear from you guys. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So the background story to pretty much what's going on right now is that they're currently working on the fourth stimulus package and trying to find the best way to approve it or get it through. Now, the background story to the executive order side is that what's really happening right now is that because they are currently struggling, and certainly has been struggling over the last, let's just say, indefinite period of time, in order to try to get the fourth stimulus package, a lot of the people in Congress are now trying to press President Biden in order to try to just run through that, to kind of create a special way to approve a lot of these programs. And maybe the background story to one of the even more important reasons why they're really trying to get this through is because of everything that has to do with the midterm elections. Because the story right now is that the midterm elections are coming up very, very soon, and because this is very, very particularly important. So the belief is that if they are not able to get any particular programs through by then, not only is it going to make it very, very difficult for them to just do things in the future, but it also means that it's going to potentially discourage a lot of people to come out to vote for them, because it just, this is just logic. If you want to gain supporters, you might have to have something to kind of show them, to convince them. And because the story is that there are many, many people that definitely do support the Biden agenda, again, just speaking objectively, but however, they also don't necessarily want to vote for the enemy, which is, again, the other side. But if they don't feel that they can fully, they're basically like kind of in that like neutral, situation where they want to vote for Biden, but now they don't know and they're trying to question it, but they definitely don't want to vote for the enemy. There's a lot of belief that they might end up just not voting at all. And so it's very, very crucial, because if they are not able to go through with everything related to this, then the problem is that it's probably going to make it even more difficult now for them to really approve any kind of policy or law in the future. And this goes on even beyond stimulus checks. So now at this point, if they even want to do anything for families, taxes, if they're already struggling now, it is really only going to get even more difficult. So at this point, they really need to try to run through their options, and that's why one of them is through an executive order, which is what this whole video and a lot of the stuff that's happening is really based around. Now, in terms of the specifics of the actual executive order side, about if, let's say, they were to do executive orders, what is it exactly that they really want to press Biden to do, or what is the specific program that we can potentially expect to see? So this is basically like a pamphlet, although there's many other articles that we're also probably going to show that really just highlight that right now the story is that there are currently about 55 executive orders / actions that President Biden, or that Congress wants President Biden to really try to get through. And I'll probably maybe attach this document maybe in like the comments or description. But of course, again, there are also timestamps so you guys can kind of jump around to which part you want to hear. But we'll probably just for this video just run through the surface level of what these programs are. And then maybe in a future video really dive deep into the stimulus check side of things. So definitely maybe consider subscribing if you guys are interested and haven't done so already. But the first program that they're really trying to get through in the world of executive actions is pretty much everything related to healthcare, because the story is that right now, as many of you guys may or may not know, healthcare in our country is very particularly expensive. You know, we wish that, you know, this could become something where we have universal healthcare, but at the very least, maybe they can at least reduce the cost. And feel free to share any stories if you guys have any in terms of just having to deal with just healthcare and its cost inside of our country, because there are definitely many, and probably potentially even more, that probably will be able to relate to that. So the idea is that they want to do everything that has to do with reforming healthcare, cheaper cost, more access, better healthcare, cheaper cost of medication and prescription drug prices, and also just things about just dealing with the pandemic. They also do want to include some kind of executive order in order to try to create money in order to help better solve and really finally complete everything related to solving the pandemic. And if they end up doing this in a lot of ways, the biggest benefit is that it can maybe just make people healthier in general, so maybe they don't even have to deal with a lot of the potential stuff that comes in the world of healthcare. But this is really the first thing. The second thing that they really want to work on when it comes to the world of executive orders, very straightforward, is just dealing with student loans. And this is still relatively important. The big idea really is that they just want President Biden to create a policy in order to cancel student loans. And this can be very big, because if you happen to be a student, or if you happen to be an adult that still has student loans, then this can potentially help a lot, because it's going to be able to reduce the cost and in a lot of ways make a difference of potentially a couple thousand, maybe even potentially over $10,000. So that might even be even more beneficial than what a stimulus check can provide for many of you guys. Of course, I will admit one thing about this is that because of a lot of controversy, this is probably one of the least likely executive order to go through, but it is still on the table. So I figured it's important to really be able to share. Now, the third executive order that they're really thinking about doing is pretty much just about everything related to climate change. We won't talk a lot about this just because it is relatively straightforward, and I think it's more important to hear about the programs that involve money inside of our pockets. But the long story short is that this is something of interest. It's still important to share, is that he just wants to spend more money on things such as like renewable energy, gas, oil, making, just dealing with all sorts of things related to climate and our earth, and just making it a healthier and better place for all of us to just hopefully try to enjoy life a lot better. And that's really the biggest thing. And especially if you do work in that industry, it could be very beneficial. But maybe now to move on to the fourth executive order, which is probably something that's actually very relatable to a lot of us, is that he pretty much wants to do a lot of stuff related to improving the workforce. So if you are someone that is unemployed, or if you were someone that used to be unemployed, or maybe you're currently unemployed, this is the part that can potentially be very, very relatable, because he wants to essentially just create a bunch of plans in order to improve everything related to people's jobs. This means basically everything ranging from just better working conditions, higher salary, lower cost, creating physical jobs, creating programs to get people employed, and also creating all sorts of requirements so that workers can have better hours, safer conditions, and maybe this will be something that will incentivize people to not just go back to work, but even for people that are currently working to maybe enjoy their jobs better. And I think at the end of the day, this is something that I think almost every single person can, or certainly will potentially maybe be able to relate to, if they're, actively, which I know a lot of people are in those specific situations right now, trying to go out to find employment. Now, the fifth executive order that he really wants to cover, and I guess this is another one that we're going to just talk very, very briefly about, is that he pretty much just wants to create a lot of policies related to just social. So basically just the social side of the country. So what this really means is that it relates to things such as like immigration, equal rights, social equality. He wants to essentially try to create programs or just policies to make it so that it's a lot easier to gain citizenship, to allow immigrants to come in, to provide programs for immigrants and everything related to that world. Also to do things related to social justice and equality. So basically things such as like promoting diversity, more representation, changing the legal system, everything related to the law. And that's just something that I think is just also relatively important to just put it out there, because it is still something that he's working on. So it's important to share. But now finally, maybe moving on to the last thing, to really summarize the executive, because again, there's 55 executive orders, but we try to clump them into categories of what they cover. But the last one that we're really going to talk about is going to be everything related to taxes. So the story pretty much to this, and this is probably one of the ones that actually really does relate to stimulus checks. We'll probably make a video to really dive deep, but the long story short is that he wants to change the tax policy to increase taxes for a lot of rich people and for a lot of specific corporations inside of our country. The motivation behind this is because at the end of the day, the stimulus checks were actually a tax program. That's the reason why many people were able to receive stimulus checks and didn't have to pay taxes for it. It's also the reason why the child tax credit is called the child tax credit, because it all relates to tax programs. So what he wants to essentially do is that if he's able to raise taxes, he's now going to also be able to raise money in other areas and then use that for whatever policy he wants to do now going forward. And while it doesn't specifically state stimulus checks within the executive orders, it does specifically talk about stimulus checks in a lot of his plans in other areas outside of this. So why this is maybe very relatable and not something that necessarily comes from an article, but just something that you can kind of logically speculate, is that if he's able to raise money through the executive orders that he does, then it's possible now he'll be able to have money to maybe do both on the federal level, but also to give to other states to maybe now use that to do whatever social programs he wants to do. And this can now include all of the super important programs, whether this is things such as like child tax credit, stimulus checks, social security, programs for businesses, maybe unemployed, but just everything related to that world. And that's of course just something we really have to see. Of course, that's also a deeper topic about, what that really covers that we'll probably have to dive into another day. But with that being said, that's pretty much just what I really wanted to cover in today's update. So hopefully if you guys enjoyed that and haven't done so, consider smashing the like button. Of course, it is always greatly appreciated, but you guys can decide. Consider subscribing, hitting the bell. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts, or predictions about honestly just really anything. So that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well. If you're watching this on release dates, have a great, safe, amazing start to the new week. And hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.